The reed houses of southern Iraq have not changed in 5,000 years. The same arched roofs, the same bitumen-coated boats, the same marshland that stretches to the horizon. But the people who built the world's first cities in this land spoke a language that belongs to no family on earth. And now, the ground beneath the Persian Gulf, a landscape swallowed by the sea 8,000 years ago, is rewriting where the Sumerians actually came from. It was never Mesopotamia. In the floodplain where the Tigris meets the Euphrates, the soil is still soft. Dig 2 meters down and you hit pottery. Dig 5 and you find the foundations of temples older than the pyramids of Giza. This is the land the Greeks would later call Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, and for more than a century it has been synonymous with one name, Sumer. You have almost certainly heard their story. The Sumerians built the world's first cities, Uruk, Eridu, around 3500 BCE. They invented cuneiform, the oldest known writing system. They created the first codified laws, the first mathematical systems, the first astronomical records. They are, in the textbook version, the people who started civilization. And the textbook version says they did it right here, in the mud and marshland of southern Iraq. That is the belief most people hold. The Sumerians were Mesopotamian, born of this land, shaped by these rivers, as inseparable from this geography as the Nile is from Egypt. But there is a problem. It is a problem so persistent, so resistant to resolution, that scholars gave it a formal name more than 100 years ago. They call it the Sumerian problem. And the core of it is this: nobody knows where the Sumerians came from. Their language offers no clue. Or rather, it offers a clue that deepens the mystery. Sumerian is what linguists call a languished isolate. It is connected to no other language on earth. Not Indo-European, not Semitic, not Dravidian, not Uralic, not Sino-Tibetan. Scholars have tried linking it to Turkish, to Finnish, to Tibetan, to Basque. Every attempt has failed. Sumerian stands alone. And then there are the city names: Eridu, Larsa, but Larsa, Nippur, Lagash, Kish. These are the great cities of Sumer, but the names themselves are not Sumerian words. Linguists have long noted that these place names belong to an older, unknown language, a so-called substrate that was already present in the region before the Sumerian speakers arrived. If the Sumerians built these cities from nothing, why are the cities not named in their language? Some scholars suggested the Sumerians migrated from the mountains of Central Asia. Others pointed east to the Indus Valley. A persistent fringe theory, you have seen it on the internet, claims they were seeded by the Anunnaki, extraterrestrial beings described in Sumerian mythology. These theories range from speculative to absurd, but they share a common origin: the uncomfortable fact that mainstream scholarship cannot explain where the Sumerians came from. The Anunnaki theory, popularized by Zecharia Sitchin in the 1970s, rests on selective and widely discredited translations of Sumerian texts. No credible Assyriologist supports the claim that cuneiform records describe genetic manipulation by alien beings. What Sitchin interpreted as advanced biotechnology, specialists read as standard mythological narrative, creation stories not fundamentally different from those of any ancient civilization. The theory persists because the real mystery is so stubborn that people fill the vacuum with spectacle. The Indian origin theory has more academic history but fares no better under genetic scrutiny. In 2011, a team of geneticists published a study in BMC Evolutionary Biology that went looking for the genetic footprint of the Sumerians in the most logical place: the people still living in the same landscape. The Marsh Arabs, the Maidan, inhabit the wetlands of southern Iraq, the same marshes that surrounded the ancient Sumerian cities. Their lifestyle has barely changed in millennia. They build arched reed houses called mudhifs, using techniques depicted on Sumerian cylinder seals from 2600 BCE. They fish with spears. They navigate slender bitumen-coated boats called taradas. They are, by every cultural measure, the closest living connection to the Sumerians. The study surveyed Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA variation in 143 Marsh Arabs and compared them against a large sample of Iraqi controls. The results were definitive on one point: the Marsh Arabs carry a predominantly autochthonous Middle Eastern gene pool. Not Indian, not Central Asian, not African, Middle Eastern. More precisely, the Y chromosome data revealed a local expansion of the J1 page O8 haplogroup dating to approximately 4,000 years ago. Although Y chromosome age estimates carry significant margins of error, the timing overlaps directly with the Sumerian city-state period. the era when Uruk, Eridu, Lagash, and Larsa were at their peak. The conclusion was careful but clear. If the Marsh Arabs are descendants of the ancient Sumerians, then the Sumerians were most likely autochthonous, indigenous to the region, and not migrants from the Indian subcontinent or anywhere in South Asia, but autochthonous. To where exactly? This is where the story turns. Because indigenous to the region does not mean indigenous to the mudflats of southern Iraq as they exist today. 8,000 years ago, the Persian Gulf did not exist. Where there is now water, there was land. A vast, fertile floodplain fed by 4 rivers, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Karun, and the Wadi Batin. At its peak, this exposed basin was approximately the size of Great Britain. In 2010, archaeologist Geoffrey Rose of the University of Birmingham published a landmark paper in Current Anthropology proposing what he called the Persian Gulf Oasis hypothesis. Rose argued that this now submerged landscape had been continuously inhabited for as long as 100,000 years. It was, he suggested, a demographic refugium, a sanctuary where human populations survived the extreme droughts of the ice ages, sheltered by freshwater rivers and underground springs while the surrounding deserts became uninhabitable. Then, around 8,000 years ago, rising sea levels swallowed the entire basin. The Indian Ocean poured through the Strait of Hormuz and drowned the oasis. And something remarkable happened on the shoreline. Over 60 new archaeological sites appeared virtually overnight. Permanent stone houses, long-distance trade networks, decorated pottery, domesticated animals, evidence of one of the oldest boats in the world. These were not the camps of wandering nomads. These were the settlements of a displaced civilization, people who already knew how to build, trade, and organize complex societies. They appeared along the Gulf shore with no apparent precursor in the archaeological record. Rose's explanation: the precursors are underwater. Now place that timeline against the Sumerian record. The Sumerians themselves in their own literature did not claim to have always lived in Mesopotamia. They told stories of a paradise called Dilmun, a sacred land associated with creation, with fresh water, with the god Enki. Dilmun was, in their mythology, the place where civilization began, and Dilmun has been identified by archaeologists with modern Bahrain, an island in the Persian Gulf, sitting directly above the submerged oasis. The Sumerians described Dilmun as a place where fresh water bubbled up from underground springs. This is not metaphor. Bahrain's name in Arabic literally means the two waters, salt and fresh, because the island sits atop artesian springs that push fresh water up through the seabed. It is a geological fact encoded in a 5,000-year-old myth. The deeper genetic picture, revealed by the massive 2022 Southern Arc study led by Iosif Lizardis at Harvard, adds another layer. By sequencing 727 ancient individuals across West Asia and Southeastern Europe over an 11,000-year span, the team showed that Neolithic Mesopotamia was not a genetic island. It was a crossroads. Pre-pottery Neolithic populations in the region carried a three-way mixture of Anatolian, Levantine, and Caucasus hunter-gatherer ancestry. People had been moving into and through this landscape for millennia before the Sumerians ever built a ziggurat. A separate 2022 study of 13 individuals from Sirenu Tepesi in Upper Mesopotamia dating to 8500–7500 BCE confirmed the pattern. The people living in Mesopotamia during the dawn of agriculture were already a blended population drawn from multiple surrounding regions. One woman in the sample carried a distinct Caucasus and Zagros genetic signature, evidence of long-distance migration thousands of years before the first Sumerian city. What the evidence cannot yet do is settle the question with finality. No one has successfully extracted and sequenced ancient DNA from a confirmed Sumerian individual of the 3rd or 4th millennium BCE. The hot, wet conditions of southern Iraq are catastrophic for DNA preservation. The genetic evidence we have is indirect, drawn from modern proxy populations and from Neolithic ancestors who predate the Sumerians by thousands of years. But the indirect evidence is converging. A language no one can trace, city names that belong to someone else, a mythology that points to a drowned paradise in the Gulf, a genetic profile that is local to the broader region but cannot be pinned to a single migration route, and a submerged landmass the size of a country, occupied for tens of thousands of years, that disappeared beneath the sea at precisely the moment advanced settlements erupted along the shoreline. The Sumerians were never from Mesopotamia. They were from a world that Mesopotamia replaced, a world now buried under salt water and sediment, carrying secrets that may never surface. Today, in the marshes of southern Iraq, the Madans still build their homes from reeds. They have done this without interruption for at least 7,000 years. In 1991, Saddam Hussein drained 90% of the Iraqi marshlands in a campaign of deliberate ecological destruction aimed at the marsh Arab population. Tens of thousands were displaced. A way of life that had survived the fall of Sumer, the Akkadian conquest, the Persian Empire, the Mongol invasion, and the Ottoman centuries nearly ended in a single decade. After 2003, the marshes were partially reflooded. Some Madan returned. The Muthifs went back up. The Taradas were rebuilt, but the population is a fraction of what it was. The living bridge to the Sumerians grows thinner every year, and beneath the Persian Gulf, the land the Sumerians may have called home remains unexcavated. No underwater archaeological survey has been conducted at the scale Rose called for in 2010. The evidence that could settle the Sumerian problem. Tools, structures, human remains may be sitting on the Gulf floor, less than 40 meters below the surface. We mapped the human genome. We have not mapped the floor of the Persian Gulf. If the marsh Arabs are still living the way the Sumerians did 5,000 years ago, same houses, same boats, same marshes, at what point does cultural continuity become proof of ancestry? And what would change if we found that proof beneath the Gulf?